Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS show's all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Rachel Carlson, Yelp Pittsburgh's community director. But first, let's cut the bullshit. Pittsburgh sports fans are known for passionate loyalty to their hometown teams. They're also known to travel well, seemingly turning Super Bowls into home games with huge numbers of Steeler fans in attendance. The travel well distinction could be expanded to include the beach, specifically Ocean City, Maryland. Vacationing Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates fans can get a taste of Pittsburgh in more ways than one at Buxy's Salty Dog, an Ocean City sports bar and restaurant with local ties. Doug Buxy Bucksbaum is a Johnstown native and IUP alumnus who bleeds and feeds black and gold. He calls it the hometown tavern with a taste of the burg. I call it a marketing masterpiece. Buxy's makes it seem like home with customized shirts, mugs, hats, and menu items. Imagine walking in after a day at the beach and meeting Pittsburgh fans hailing from A to Z, Altoona to Zelienople, and just about everywhere in between. I talked to Buxy, and he gave a quote that said, "Our goal is to make you feel at home while at the beach. It's all about the hometown teams and tastes. When you're on vacation, you want to relax, have a great time, and create memories that will last a lifetime. If we can be a small part of that, we're happy," Bucksbaum told me. You can build and leverage your brand, too, by following what I'll call Buxy's 6 super marketing wins. Number 1, know your target. And our guest today is going to talk a lot about that. Clearly define who you want to reach. He wants to reach Pittsburgh fans. Make it about them. Again, our guest will talk about how Yelp does that for all of us. It's not what you want to sell, it's what they want to buy. Hometown tavern at the beach. Number 3, touch emotions. Does the target audience care about what you're selling? Duh. Pittsburgh fans love their teams. Number 4, be creative. What do you have that no one else can offer? Have you seen those Salty Dog t-shirts? If you haven't, go online and check them out. Give it to them when and where they want it. It has to be easy for us to buy. A convenient location and hours for Buxy's. Make it an experience. Value is based on the unique, personalized experience of your individual customers. Buxy's Salty Dog is an experience. Trust me. And full disclosure, Buxy was my college roommate. And I want to say, like so many of us go to college, and we often say, did I really use what I did the whole time I was in college? And Buxy used what he did the whole time in college, my friends. Buxy is a partier. The No BS Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/NoBS. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Our guest today is Rachel Carlson, Yelp Pittsburgh's community director. You might think of Yelp as a way to check out reviews about restaurants or stores, and you'd be correct. But Yelp does so much more, and we're going to learn all about it today. Rachel is the first person to represent Yelp in Pittsburgh and continues to show our region the incredible tools Yelp has to offer. She's passionate about building strong relationships between the many different local businesses and organizations in the area, and she creates and organizes fun and new events she'll tell us about that showcase the Burgh's best and brightest. Rachel also appears on media outlets like KDKA-TV, Star 100.7, WESA, where she just taped her other podcast. So today, 2 podcast tapings. She's also featured in World Magazine as an expert there. She co-hosts a weekly podcast that I've mentioned there called Social Club that she'll tell us more about too. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Whoa. What a nice introduction.
And I'm a super fan. I'm a super fan of Rachel's.
Suzanne, we talk about 6 degrees of separation to Suzanne. Anybody that I know or have met somehow has 6 degrees of separation. And again, another fantastic guest that you brought us.
Telling you, Rachel's the bomb. Just wait. Just wait.
Oh, stop.
Are you ready to rock it?
I am. If I have the big head needs to shrink a little bit, but I'm good.
I can't wait to get into all the Yelp stuff, but we start off in a traditional way here. We ask about your career journey, your path to all this cool stuff you're doing. So talk about it.
So I am not a shy person, and that is thanks to doing theater for many years. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and theater throughout from 3rd grade on to high school. Thought that was my dream and goals. Went to Point Park, auditioned, got rejected, not once, not twice, but 3 times. But that put me on a path. I wanted to do communications for my minor anyway. And I had met with the broadcasting advisor, and he was like, do you want to do radio? And so I was like, all right, sure. I'm in. I like to talk and I like to be the center of attention. So, okay. So I went to Point Park for 4 years for broadcasting and also took television classes as well. Went into radio after that, realized that radio was changing rapidly, and worked part-time at Radio Disney, worked part-time at KDKA and the CW, enjoyed all of my experiences, but couldn't find a full-time job to save my life. Then I worked as well as part-time odd jobs. I've done everything from barista to serving to retail, and finally landed at the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, where I came back to the arts, enjoyed my 4 years there immensely, loved it there, and then came to my fourth year, realized it was time to move on. I want to be passionate about my job, and saw the job listing for Yelp, and it said, do you love Pittsburgh? And I was like, yes. And it was like, do you love being social? And I was like, yes. And so I interviewed for 5 long months because they had not launched Pittsburgh yet, and finally got the offer May 2011, and celebrated 5 years in May.
Wow, a lot of stuff there. Let me go back to a couple of the radio gigs, because I always find it interesting when people do different jobs early on and what they learn from it, what they take from it. Tell me about the Radio Disney and your part-time experience there.
It was wonderful. It's a great organization. I was a part-timer and helped with the promotions gigs at area events. I actually am not a big kid fan. So it's funny that I was there because there were all these screaming kids around, but I enjoyed the experience so much and the people that I was working around that it was totally fine to be there. And I just learned in terms of the bosses that I was around and what they were doing and how organized they were and how much of a go-getter you have to be in that field. I remember being in the radio field and just kind of like hanging out. So when I interned at Clear Channel, which I still call Clear Channel, it's now iHeartMedia or iHeartRadio, and I interned and then just started hanging out after I was done, and they were like, you got to go at some point. And I interned at Sirius Satellite Radio in New York City and would like just hang out. And I was the first internship class at Sirius. And so it wasn't very organized. And they had me ripping CDs into MP3 format the entire time. And so they didn't really have us doing anything else. And so I would sneak off and sit in people's studios. And I became friends with the comedy station a lot. And so I would sit in, I'm a huge SNL fan, so I would sit in on Jim Brewer's show that he had. And they had a Wise Guys show with the one guy from The Sopranos. And so I would just talk to the DJs and ask them for advice and help, and doing my radio air check and just kind of gathering all this advice and being like, who are you? Who are you? What's going on?
Because she's so shy.
No,
She's
not
shy.
at all. Even at Starbucks, I'd hand them my coffee and I'd be like, hi, what do you do? What's going on? I just wanted to make those connections any way I could and hustled.
A lot of good points there. Isn't radio awesome for what you just said, just hanging out and learning?
Yes.
It's just, there's so many opportunities to learn anytime that you're involved with anything in radio, and I think that was excellent. And then the second thing is she's now getting up to take pictures and so forth because she's the multi-talented Suzanne Mayer. But you have another thing in common with Suzanne. Did you know that she was the host of the Kids Club on, is that what it's called? Did I call it correctly?
I don't know if I ever told you that.
On PGH TV. So while she's getting settled back into answers.
And she likes kids.
She was fantastic, but get this. So her target demo of people that would remember her are a certain age. And Ed Piskor was one of our guests. And I was telling you a little bit about Ed before the show. A local guy from Homestead, as an artist, a graphic artist, and a sketch comic book guy that wrote these 4 comic books, The History of Rap. And he's here for the show, and as the show ends, Suzanne goes, hey, you mentioned how old you are and everything. When you were a kid, you said you watched a lot of Saturday morning shows. Did you ever watch the Kids Club? And he goes, yeah, I love that show. And she goes, I'm Suzanne. He got beat red.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes, oh my gosh. He goes, I can't wait to tell my friends I met you. So Suzanne, tell your story about the era that you were there.
Oh, you just told it. It was about the 10-year span. It was pre-Nickelodeon, pre-Disney Channel. It was the only other competition. There were Saturday morning cartoons. The only other competition was PBS for any kind of children's programming, and so Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, so for 10 years I hosted the cartoons.
That's amazing.
It was great.
But the cutest thing was we go outside and he goes, man, I met Suzanne from the kids club or whatever.
And that has to make you feel so good.
And old.
No. You have to think the good.
Yes.
Versus.
The No BS Marketing Podcast with Dave Mastovich is brought to you by Mass Solutions. Put our 3-step No BS process to work for you. Visit masssolutions.biz today to take your marketing to another level. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.
You spent that time in Radio Disney, learning it's serious, and a lot of that stuff. And then you go and you answer an ad. And what I loved about that was we talk a lot about using predictive index as a tool to help when you're recruiting. And if you use tools like predictive index or Myers-Briggs, you should write your ads based on the type of person you're looking for. And it sounds like that ad was perfect for who they were looking to and for who they found.
Yeah, for Yelp?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. When I saw the listing on Indeed and had used Monster for years and not really found anything with that. I found a lot of dead ends. I remember going to an interview at a really weird office building in Greentree, and the office was littered in boxes, and I have no clue what the business was for. It was the weirdest experience ever, and I found it off Monster, and I found the Yelp one off Indeed and went with that lead and saw the listing and got so excited and thought, if I don't get this, I don't know what I'm going to do, because it described me to a T.
Tell us about it. So you go in your first day, and how long have you been with Yelp?
5 years.
So 5 years ago, you go in for your first day. What do you remember from the first week, month?
So I remember very vividly, this is a work from home job. So I was at the ballet in an office for 4 years. I was at, like I said, retail. I went in somewhere since I was 15, I was working, went somewhere for the job. And I remember my first day, it was Monday. I was in my pajamas. I went downstairs. I got my tea, my cup of tea, got my cereal. I sat down. I opened up the Yelp sent laptop that they gave me, feeling super fancy. And I opened up my email, and there were like 20 emails. And I was like reading through and getting just overwhelmed. And I remember standing up and looking out the window of my Mount Washington home and thinking, what did I do?
The oh God question. Happens first day a lot of times.
Yes, I was completely overwhelmed and terrified. But obviously it worked out for the best in the end.
Well, working from home or working remotely is a challenge. And so we have even one of our assistant producers, we have two Shelbys.
Yes.
So it's a unique name.
Two Shelbys.
It's a unique name. You don't have a
Two
lot of
Shelbys are better than
and
one.
we have two Shelbys, not one, but not two, but they both help out with the show, and they both happen to be here today, so we pulled them both in. But one of the Shelbys has a similar experience as you, working virtually. Tell us about some of the ways you've turned that into a positive, because it can be challenging with the isolation.
A desk. For sure. I worked. It's so
a
crazy.
Desk.
Yes.
Our listeners,
it's
right
so
off the
simple.
bat, really simple. A desk.
I went to IKEA and got a desk. I worked on my couch, which is so horrible in so many ways, because I would turn on the TV and flip on Ellen, or I would walk over to the kitchen. Horrible for your back. I would just place my laptop on my knees. It was super distracting, and I got a desk. It was way too long. It was maybe into my second or third year I got a desk, and my world just completely
worked for 2
changed.
years without a desk.
Yes. which is crazy.
I can see you doing that. They're very similar. Suzanne, I can see you doing that.
I totally do.
Yeah, it's super crazy, but it changed my whole world. And I would also say the other thing that was incredibly smart that I learned early on was to not say yes to every single meeting any day of the week. So I had a yes to every single day of the week. I would get ready, get in my car, drive all around Pittsburgh, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I wasn't getting anything done. So I made myself set a schedule and say no and say, okay, I can't meet you Monday, but I can meet you Tuesday. So my set days to go out and about are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday and Wednesdays are strictly at home. Friday is kind of the wild card day for me. But I say no to people if they want to meet on a Monday or Wednesday and say, I have to do a Tuesday, Thursday, because that's fine. I can get things done on a Tuesday and Thursday. It's totally fine. Everyone understands. Everyone has their schedules. Yes. So that helped me immensely with getting work done.
That's great advice, because with the trend today of so much more of the workforce being virtual, we have to find ways to make sure that we keep our psyche where it needs to be. So the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, is to get a desk.
Get a desk.
I realize many of you might have already did that, but for those of you that didn't, the second thing is to plan accordingly so that you structure your day and know which days you're out and about and which days you're in the office at home.
Know what works for you, because I know that worked for me. I know that I don't set meetings before 10 a.m. because I will be late.
That makes two of us.
Good, because I hate to admit that, but it is very true. And knowing when to shut down the computer too, I think is hard as well. And
I don't know that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. The phone is always being checked for email, but I have learned to shut the computer down at a certain time at night and on the weekends.
I want to dig into Yelp, but I still have a couple more questions.
Sure.
What's the biggest thing that you took away from your experience at the ballet?
What is the biggest experience?
Biggest learning thing that you took away that you applied?
I had a very challenging boss. And if it weren't for her getting let go, I probably would not have been there for 4 years, which makes me super sad because I loved it so much. But it was just working through that and knowing that if you really enjoy something, you keep your head down and work smart and do the things you're supposed to do and just keep on being polite. And I think, on one hand, I kept my options open where if she wasn't going to be leaving, I may have to leave because I wasn't happy. And that's my whole thing about a job is to be happy and enjoy what you're doing. So I had that option open, but I really did keep my head down. And obviously things worked out where she was let go. So I ended up having a very successful career. But I do look back on that time with her, and it did help me learn to work with a difficult person.
And it also, we all will have difficult bosses at some point. It also helps you become a boss, because I took from bad experiences what I didn't want to do. And so that's interesting. Let's go to the other side. Let's take about your mentors other than your parents. Who were your mentors?
So I would say that I really look up to a guy that I actually met through being at Starbucks. He was at KDKA and the CW, which he is now, Dan Braddock. And
I love Dan Braddock.
I love him so much.
6 degrees
I know.
to Suzanne
And
May.
Becky Lerner,
I
great
love him.
photographer.
He took a chance on me.
Yeah.
And I mean, that means the world to me. And he is one of the nicest guys in the world. And
you met him when he was
It was one of those
coffee.
things when I was like, here's your coffee. Who are you? What do you do? And he told me he worked at the CW and KDK and I think it was WB back in the day.
Yeah.
And then, we got to talking and he was like, why don't you come in and interview? And then he gave me a job being a part-timer doing auditions for reality shows. And he really got me in the door. And I was there for 2 years doing stuff with him. But I just think I looked up for him, not only for his just demeanor and just being such a happy person, but also that he gave me a chance and let me shine, and I really just admire. I don't know if he knows that, and I should really tell him. Like, I really appreciate him doing that for me. And
I'm going to send him this link.
We have a great breakthrough on the show today.
Good. Yeah. I love him so much.
What I like about your approach is it's valuable to everybody out there is the asking questions to people and not being afraid to just start out and build a relationship, even in any role that you were in.
Yeah, I would always just sit in on the radio with Grimm when he was on the X. I would just sit in his studio and just ask him questions and talk with him. And he was just so nice to talk with me. And people at Sirius, one of the producers, would just sit there and talk with me, and I'd ask him questions. Like, that means so much. And that's one of the things, like you said, with learnings of other bosses or mentors to do now, is that I really try and take people under my wing and say, don't give up, or this is what you should be doing, or this is what you shouldn't be doing. And I really want to pay it forward in that sense, because this industry is not easy to get into. But I think if you want to do it and want to be happy and want to succeed, then you can't give up, and you got to just try all your different avenues.
She follows that, how we keep that whole authenticity theme keeps popping up. Rachel Carlson, authentic. She's just a very authentic individual.
And for the listeners out there that maybe aren't as comfortable because they're more introverted or just aren't as comfortable asking a lot of questions, what I would tell you is I had the same and still have the same philosophy as you, and it's helped me so much throughout my career. But now being on the other end, when someone asks me questions, even on my worst day, I still take that as like a wow. And I'm flattered by it. So I think a lot of times people are afraid to ask someone questions that's in a higher capacity or in a professional creative capacity. And that person's most likely going to be flattered by it. And if they're not, oh, well, that's on them. You ask the question and you get on to the next.
You got to keep it real in the sense where you were there once, and it meant so much to me to take the time to have them helping me. I just really want to do the same for so many people.
That's Rachel Carlson, Yelp's Community Relations Director. I probably messed that up, but we are on the No BS show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Rachel, talk about a learning experience when maybe you were the BS employee, a tough boss, or maybe your communication wasn't what it needed to be. Looking back, when do you think you might have been guilty of some BS, and what'd you learn from it?
I have a good one. Oof, I have a good one. I will. It was probably my last week at the ballet, and I
knew it was going to be a ballet story.
I knew it. We had G-Chat, and I was chatting with a coworker about a boss that I had currently that I was not pleased with. This is not the boss that got let go, but another boss that had come in. We just kind of filtered in a lot of bosses, marketing bosses, while I was there. And I had some great ones there and some horrible ones and some just not stellar ones that were just not great fits. And I was talking with a coworker about her, and it wasn't pleasant things, and we were just chit-chatting about it, and, days go on and we chit-chat about it. And then I left, and I was sitting in New York City for training 2 weeks into the job at Yelp, and my phone just blows up. And my coworkers at the ballet are texting me and saying, they found your chats between you and this other coworker, and it's just this mess, and he's gotten brought into the executive director's office, and the boss is crying, and it's this horrible thing. And I just it was horrible. It was my mistake. You should never do that. And I didn't, number one, I should not have done that. I should not have done that. And number two, I should have deleted everything, but I just didn't know. But I shouldn't have done it. Should not have done it. Number one, it just shouldn't have happened. And I felt terrible. The guy got fired. The guy that I was talking to got fired.
Oh,
and
my.
it was just a mess. And it was my fault. It was partly my fault for being putting myself in that situation. And that was a complete mistake.
So the lesson learned.
I'm surprised that they actually fired someone over that.
Yeah.
I mean, normally, you're going to get some people chatting and complaining, and that's interesting.
Yeah. There's a little more to the story, I think.
We're not getting the whole story.
We don't need to get anymore. That's okay.
But I did feel guilty that happened that way, and felt guilty that I was leaving people I cared about, that I was friends with that mess. And it was a complete mistake, and I definitely learned from that one.
Definitely. Well, let's go on to the positive, because I think that Yelp has a certain perception, and the vast majority of people have their ideas of what Yelp is. Talk through and tell us how you view Yelp and what we might be missing about Yelp, specifically here in Pittsburgh.
The community aspect. I think a lot of people use the Yelp, I call them creepers, use Yelp app and just type in a restaurant and look for that, go to the restaurant, enjoy the experience, and peace out until the next time they need
I think you got some creepers in the room.
Yeah, I know. I see some guilty looks. I see some very guilty looks. We have a whole community here where, like I said, I do a lot of work with business owners in terms of connecting them to the local community through events. So I want to join that part together where business owners can meet the consumer and tell them their story and tell them their background, because the local business owners are so interesting, and they talk about someone that puts their heart into things and loves what they do, because you have to, or you're insane, because it's such a hard job to be a local business owner.
Tell me an example? You connect something.
So I host events monthly for the really active users on Yelp. They're called elites. So they become an elite through a vetting process where you have to have a real photo, have to have a real name, cannot be a business owner, have to be 21 plus, have to be writing useful content that is well written and is going to help someone else decide where to go. So it's not
someone just goes, I ate here and it sucked.
Or I ate here and it was great, 5 stars. When you're reading through the reviews yourself, what are you looking for? You're looking for the ambiance, the experience, the service, the facts, the price. So these people are writing a wealth of information for you and I to read, and they get a reward to come and meet these cool business owners on a monthly basis. And so tonight I'm actually doing an event at Six Pen Kitchen, and
love that place.
They have a.
That's all I would write. I'd go, great.
Okay, no.
I'd be the lousy. I'm the creeper lousy Yelp
guy. We'll talk later.
You're not elite.
Yes, no. We'll talk later. We'll coach you. So they have a dedication to local purveyors and buying from local sources for their food. And so we're bringing in these local purveyors, and they're going to have booths and talk about what they do. And Eaton Park's going to show off that they provide this experience.
A lot of people don't realize Six Pen's owned by Eaton Park.
No, did I say Eaton Park? Yes, Six Pen Kitchen is owned by Eaton Park. Yes. Eaton Park's one of my big homies, because I worked there when I was 16 to 18. Oh, I stick around places a long time.
Suzanne Mayer. It's like the whole conversation is just like talking to you. It's great.
I love Eaton Park. So we're going to show them the experience. We're going to introduce them to the purveyors, the managers. So when you're walking down the street and Pittsburgh is growing rapidly, you're going to walk down 6th Street and you're going to see a plethora of different restaurants on your left and your right. And you're an elite and you experienced Six Pen Kitchen a month or two ago, and you're going to say, oh my gosh, I went there and I had the best lamb from Jameson's farm, and I met the manager and they were just the nicest, and I had this dessert that I didn't even know they had a pastry chef. We're going there. So it's connecting the gap between the business owners and that they're real people working hard, and these consumers are going to experience that and want to go there again and experience it over and over again.
Excellent stuff. What I want to do is dig deeper into some of the stats on the elites and non-elites and so forth, and we'll do more of that on part 2. So hear more of my interview with Rachel Carlson of Yelp on part